This is The Road Show, and I'm your host, David Warren. On today's radio program, I welcome a television icon to the airwaves of the Oasis Network, Mr. Art Linkletter. Art Linkletter has co-written a new book entitled How to Make the Rest of Your Life the Best of Your Life, and that is our subject today. Welcome to The Road Show, Art Linkletter.
Thank you. I'm happy to be with you. In fact, at my age, I'm happy to be anywhere.
Have you ever tried to figure out how many interviews you've had in your life?
Oh, no. I started interviewing when I was 10 years of age, practically, and I've been doing it ever since. And I've interviewed, among other statistics that I know about, 27,000 children aged from 4 to 10. And I've been on all three networks every week, week in and week out for years. ABC, NBC, and CBS, the only person who ever did that on all three networks through all those years. So I've interviewed kings, presidents, and I've interviewed victims of all kinds of tragedies. And I have watched the people grow old, which has happened in my lifetime. We've gone from an expectation of life to 47 years of age to 77 years of age. So the Lord, and with the help of a few doctors and a few other things, has given us, in my lifetime, 30 years of life, the most precious gift that anybody could have, if you live it correctly.
And we're going to talk about that today.
Good.
Now,
That's what I'm talking about.
do you enjoy being interviewed? I know you love interviewing, but do you like being interviewed?
Oh, sure. As a matter of fact, I like anything connected with words, whether it's written, whether it's spoken, or whether it's even thought, because I lecture some 75 times a year in a wide variety of subjects and a wide variety of venues, and I'm interviewed everywhere I go by people. I come into the town or the city or wherever I am, and I'm used to either side of the microphone.
Art Linkletter is our very special guest for the hour on today's Road Show. And Mr. Linkletter, like most television pioneers, you got your start in radio. We love radio around here, obviously. So tell us a little bit about your radio days.
Well, they began when I was studying to be an English professor at the San Diego Community College, which was a free college because I was a poor boy, couldn't afford to go to Stanford or Yale or any of those big ones. And I was studying to be a school teacher. I wanted to be a professor someday in a college and teach writing and speaking and debating and drama. And it was the bottom of the Depression. It was 1933-34. I was a junior in college, and I was making Waldorf salads in the college cafeteria when my life started in show business. It all started with a phone call over the clatter of the pots and pans in the kitchen. A stranger introduced himself, Lincoln Deller, his name was, and he said, "I've been watching your career at the college. I wonder, considering all the things you're doing, debating and being president of the student body and so forth, if you'd like to come down and be a part-time radio announcer in your spare time." I said, "Certainly," because in the bottom of the Depression, you didn't ask what the job was, what the pay was, what the stock options could possibly be. If he'd have been calling me about becoming a grave digger, I would have said the same thing. I'd be out there with a shovel digging graves because you had to work to make a living, to live. So I went down to the radio station with no hopes, no dreams, no possible thought of doing anything but having a job. And I heard a young man do something that was going to change everything in radio shortly after I was there. To begin with, just to make this very clear, I very quickly, listening to CBS it was, I began to realize that I had no talent to be a star in anything on the radio. So I gave up thoughts of that, and I just did my spot announcements and whatever else I did around the station. Because everybody was, radio in those days was stealing from everything else, because it was just starting, and they were getting talent from movies and records and concert halls and circuses and any place where professional people were doing something. And so the stars were all singers or actors or comedians. And I had none of those talents, so naturally I didn't think anything about it. But this young fellow I heard when I was there for a while had the imagination and the guts to take a microphone, a big, heavy microphone in those days, out into the street with a cable attached to it in Dallas, and just stop people and talk to them. And he didn't have any prizes, he didn't have any questions, he didn't have any production, he didn't have anything except people talking to people about anything.
Mm-hmm.
It was called the Man in the Street Show, and when I heard it, I said, "Oh, that's what I can do. I'm a talker." Spent most of my time in grammar school in the office of the principal. So I went to Mr. Deller, and I said, "If you'll give me 15 minutes of time, I'd like to sell a program I just heard on the air," and I described it, and he says, "You're crazy." I said, "Well, I'm out here, and let me try it." And that started the Man in the Street. And the Man in the Street show spread, and then it became simple quiz shows with simple little prizes. Then it became elaborate quiz shows with big prizes. Until today, if you know who you are, you win $100,000, or you try for $1 million. We gave $10 away. And then, of course, I went on to be a producer and an idea man, and sold my own shows, never had an agent, never had a manager, and worked my way up from local to regional to national, and was on the air for the next 40 years with all these other kind of talk shows, everything that I could do, whether it was a funny show or whether it was a serious show. It was all ad lib, and the writers were only idea people. So that gives you a little mouthful of how I became an all-purpose talker.
Well, Mr. Linkletter, so much of what we see on television and hear on the radio as we're talking about radio is pre-taped.
Oh, yes.
There's something special, though, about live radio where there's no safety net, isn't there? It's that extra pressure that just makes you step forward into excellence.
It's called walking a tightrope without a net.
Yes.
Anything that happened untoward or unexpected, and that was happening all the time because there was no script, and you never knew who the next person was going to be. It called for good taste. It called for a quick mind. It called for a sense of humor. And it called for a sense of timing because there was no director or producer. And it was a constant mix of making your brain pick up on anything that came along that could be made interesting or humorous or educational.
I want to ask about your career in television here in just a bit, but first let's discuss why you are on the air with us today, and that is because you and your friend Mark Victor Hansen have co-written a book entitled How to Make the Rest of Your Life the Best of Your Life. And if the name Mark Victor Hansen sounds familiar, it should, because he is the co-creator of the Chicken Soup for the Soul series. Tell me about how this book came about. Whose idea was this?
The idea was his. The production was largely mine from the standpoint of experience. He was a lecturer, and I was a lecturer, and we met. And he said, you talk about the old people. I had a talk called Old Age is Not for Sissies.
Mm-hmm.
And I talked about all the things that you should do as you get older so that people don't take away your independence and people don't believe the myths about old age, that after 65 you're either sick, senile, or sexless. And he said, when we made this book, Chicken Soup for the Soul, what we did, we just took stories of people who started from nowhere and went somewhere, something like the old Horatio Alger books of the 1880s and 90s, where there were some sensational books written about barefoot kids on the street corner who became the president of the bank. And he said, we can do it this way. You know a lot about aging, and you've written books about it, and you're a lecturer on it. You're president of the Center on Aging at the University of California. And I know a lot about selling books, and I know something, of course, about writing them. So why don't we get together, and we'll put together a book, something like Chicken Soup for the Soul, in that we'll lean on the expertise and the knowledge and the research about what life is like for people over 65. And we'll do it by the two of us getting on the telephone. And with your and my both interviewing abilities, we'll talk to experts from all over the world. We'll get them with our pressure and our pull. And there'll be people from universities, and there'll be people who've just lived long, and there'll be people who've written books about it, like Ken Dankwald, Wave Age, and other people. And we'll interview them on the phone, and we'll tape the interview, of course, and then we will get permission to use excerpts from that conversation. And we'll dot our book with all kinds of stories and research from all of these experts, like hanging ornaments on a Christmas tree. He said, you and I'll provide the tree, and we'll lean on these people, and we'll have a book that will cover everything from the worries about finance to thoughts about faith and what will happen to us after we pass away, or whether it has to do with married life, or whether it has to do all the phases of health and so forth, and we'll put it in a book. And I thought it over, and I said, Victor, I've written 27 books, and I swore when I wrote the last book that's the last one I'd write. I was gassed out. But this gives me a whole new idea, and of course, you have written and sold and put together a book that sold 140 million copies. Mm-hmm. And that is unbelievable, because I know the book business. I owned a book publishing company. A book is considered a huge success if it sells 500,000 or 1 million. And I said, with your guidance and how you did that, and your inspiration, and my knowledge, and our combined knowledge of how to reach people who know more than we do even about this stuff, let's try it. So we put the book together, and we've been out on the road now for the last month and a half. We came out on July 17th, which was my 94th birthday, and my 50th anniversary of opening Disneyland and a lot of other things.
Wow.
And we have been on radio and television and churches and colleges and selling the book. And that's the long story of how this thing developed and became what I think is going to be what in the book business is called an evergreen. In other words, it just will keep on going.
Well, the information is timeless. The name of the book is How to Make the Rest of Your Life the Best of Your Life, and this is by today's guest, Art Linkletter, co-author with Mark Victor Hansen. This is out on Nelson Books at your local Christian bookstore and other retail outlets. Mr. Linkletter, I don't know if it was bragging, or I'd like to just say I was just sharing with people, maybe it was bragging, telling them that I would be interviewing you today, and everybody I told knew who you are, but everybody had the same question. How old is Art Linkletter now? Now, I found that funny that was the question that they asked. You just mentioned that you're 94 years old. Isn't it strange that people are fascinated by someone who can live to 94 up and nearing 100?
That's because, in the first place, so few people do it. And in the second place, in the book, I bring out, because it's one of my favorite topics, that the correct question for people who are senior citizens is not how old are you, but how are you old? Do you get the difference? Mm. Because some people just get old, and other people grow old. And our book tells you how to grow old. That means to keep your life meaningful, keep your life productive. We retire the so-called retirement. Never retire from life. You do something different, perhaps. You follow some passion that you never had a chance to do when you were younger for a variety of reasons. And so, how are you old is the right question, and I'll tell you how old I am. I'm about 45.
Great. Well, you sound 45. You really do.
I'm curious. I have a great sense of humor, and I follow something that I preach about at University of California, Los Angeles, where I'm located, and that is lifelong learning. never stop learning, because if you know that every year a hill is a little higher and the view is a little better and wisdom is a little clearer, and you can pick the things that you really have a passion for.
Mr. Linkletter, in your book, How to Make the Rest of Your Life the Best of Your Life, you wrote that the book aims to answer the big question, yeah, I can live longer, but can I live better? And the answer, according to you and Mr. Hansen, is yes. So before we start to share information from the book, let's discuss the importance of how someone views aging. Now, some see it as the worst of their life, but you see it as the best of your life.
Exactly.
Address these two different kind of mindsets.
It all has grown out of the mythology of old age down through the centuries, when actually old age was a terrible time. People were put into old folks' homes, and I lived in one when I was young because I was abandoned as an orphan, and I was adopted by some nice old people who were street preachers, street evangelists, and we were very poor, and we lived in some old folks' homes, which were then run at that time, almost universally, by churches. And they were well-meaning people, but they had none of the knowledge of all of the things you can do and inspire and handle older people. They were just places where people were warehoused until they died. And when people are warehoused, they're not happy. They don't know what to do. They're not well. They have aches and they have pains. And pretty soon, with all the feeling that there was nothing to do when you retired and you just were put away someplace to compare yourselves with other poor old put-aways, there's a whole different approach to life now. And that is done because we have better medicine, we have better knowledge of the psychology of growing older, and we're destroying the myth. There are 7 or 8 myths of old age, and these are not true because there is a second prime, we call it, the second prime of life, and that's when you're over 65 and you're reasonably healthy. You're not quite as spry as you used to be, and maybe you have a few aches and pains, but you can make your life interesting and productive. And I'll tell you why as we go along.
You just mentioned second prime, Mr. Linkletter,
Yeah.
and on page 3 of the book, you're talking about that, where you're saying that a true second prime makes your first prime look like a dress rehearsal. I love that.
That's right, because today we're living so much longer and more productively that age 60 has truly become the new age of 40.
Yeah.
The prime of life has been considered 30 to 45 or so, right in there, when our careers are in full swing and our minds are at their most creative and our passions burn the brightest and hottest. And how do we ensure that the bodies remain fit and our minds stay alert and creative and our finances are stable and even growing throughout our senior years? Well, that's what we call the second prime, the next prime of your life. And it's different. It's not going to be the same. To begin with, you will be looking ahead to the possibility of living an extra 20 or 30 years instead of thinking the only thing ahead of you is death. Getting older is no longer preparing for death. It's enjoying and making life meaningful. And to make life meaningful, you have to find a purpose. And the purpose may be that of a volunteer, because there's thousands of different kinds of things you can volunteer to do with your wisdom and knowledge of growing older, starting, in my opinion, with your own family, because of the American family today is in a state of disrepair, and grandparents are the glue that keeps a lot of them together.
Mm-hmm. I'm David Warren, talking on today's Road Show with a television icon. Of course, we're on the radio today on the Road Show. His name is Art Linkletter, and he has co-written the book, How to Make the Rest of Your Life the Best of Your Life, with his friend Mark Victor Hansen. This book is out on Nelson Books, available at your local Christian bookstore and at other retail outlets. Well, according to today's guest, Mr. Art Linkletter, he says, forget entitlements, try empowerments. So when we come back, we're going to discuss 10 empowerments for those headed for or now living in their second prime. Back after this. I'm David Warren, here with some exciting news for Oasis listeners. We have a new mobile device app. It's free, easy to download, and lets you enjoy our refreshing music and talk everywhere you go. If you have an Android cell phone, go to the Google Play Store. And if you have an iPhone or iPad, visit the Apple Store and search for Oasis Radio Network. Be an Oasis ambassador and share this news with family and friends around the world. On today's Road Show, it is such an honor to get to interview one of the great television icons, Mr. Art Linkletter. He has co-written the book with Mark Victor Hansen, How to Make the Rest of Your Life the Best of Your Life. And you mentioned earlier, Mr. Linkletter, that you are 94 years young. Describe a typical day in your life. How busy are you? How active?
Well, there is no really typical day because my life is a constant merry-go-round or a whirlwind or whatever you want to call it, of different things. I am busy in education, raising money for Christian schools across the country. I lecture at least 10, 12, 14 times a year, raising funds to provide churches with the wherewithal to start a school where our youngsters can have a faith and a religious knowledge as well as the world's knowledge. As you know, that's not a part of public education anymore. They don't even want to call it Christmas anymore. There's all kinds of unfortunate things that take us away from the Christ that we've known. And so I lecture to these schools, and I travel, of course, takes me all over the country, and I've raised hundreds of thousands of dollars, and over the past 15, 17 years, I've watched churches that started with a little kindergarten in the basement or in a trailer that's outside the little school. And those have gone from kindergarten to the first grade, and then they had second grade, and they go up to the 12th grade before they push the child into probable colleges. And then I go on in that particular vein. I spent a lot of my time going to Pepperdine University, Malibu. I was there last night, and have helped to raise millions of dollars for that great Christian university, which has become one of the outstanding universities in the United States, and with a full religious program as well as all of the other things you get at a university. And there I'm on the Board of Regents, and I help to plan the development and the raising of millions of dollars every year to help students who are poor but unable to go to college. So that's one of the things that keeps me busy. And then I'm in businesses. I'm in the oil and gas business, drilling wells all over the country because I was in Dallas, Texas when I was a young man and got acquainted with a lot of oil people. And I'm in solar industry because that's the industry that's going to replace fossil fuels in the next century, and one of them, that is, it's an alternate fuel that saves the environment from being fouled up by the burning of fossil fuel. And I'm traveling all over the world, going to India and Africa and other places to help promote the manufacturing of radiant power with the sun. And that is a very exciting and very scientific thing that I just got into 5 years ago.
Wow.
I was a spokesman for the company, and now I'm the chairman of the board and an owner. Then, of course, there is the business of my own family that comes high on my schedule. I have 17 great-grandchildren and 8 grandchildren, and I've had 5 children, and I've had the same wife for 71 years in Hollywood.
Yeah, that's quite a feat, isn't it?
Yeah, when I was talking to Larry King the other night on his program, he was remarking on the number of years I had, which we'd been talking about. He says, "Well, Art," he says, I've been married, in Hollywood. I've been in the show business, married for 46 years." And he paused a moment. He said, 6 of the nicest girls you ever want to meet.
That's funny.
So then we've got the family, which is the center of my life, really, in many ways, because I help guide the careers and the opportunities, and I'm the main pole in the circus tent of the Linkletter family, and they're welcome to call me at any time with their problems with girlfriends, the school teacher, with their boss, or on up to my son, who's 69 years of age, Jack Linkletter, who runs my real estate deals. So that's another part of my life. And then, of course, I'm a great guy for exercise, and this is the first year that my wife and I have stopped skiing.
Oh, okay.
Skiing.
Skiing.
I'm talking about skiing in the high mountains, 10, 11,000 feet at Vail and Aspen, Steamboat Springs, Sun Valley, and Park City. And Lois persuaded me to stop this year because she says, I want to be a wife, not a nurse. So she gave away all my ski clothes when I was off lecturing.
So it's time to find another sport hobby for you.
Well, I'm a great swimmer. I was a Pacific Coast backstroke champion. Tried out for the Olympics in '36, and I've got a big pool where I live, of course, in Bel Air. Most of the homes here are, very beautiful grounds and pools and everything. A long, long distance from my youth, believe me. So I do a lot of swimming, which is just the best kind of exercise for seniors because the water is not an impact sport like running or some sports. I was a handball player until I was 50, played in national tournaments. But anyway, that's another thing. Then we travel a lot. I speak on ships all over the world. I take cruises. I just came back from the Queen Mary II, the biggest cruise ship in the world, on their maiden voyage to Hawaii and Mexico. And then I go on other ships and speak on the subject of successful living and happy living and later life to the largely older population, which is on the ships I go on, which are expensive ships. And they're not the carnival-type cruise ships with all the young guys looking for excitement and other girls.
Oh, okay.
So you see, I'm just giving you a little dip into all the things I do because I'm writing books and I'm appearing at all kinds of special speaking dates. I talk on the subject of business and marketing. I talk on the subject of health. I, of course, talks on raising children because I had all the years of working with children. Kids Say the Darndest Things has been one of the big books that I've written in the past. So, you see, every day is a different day. Today, for instance, was getting up and having an early breakfast, so I'd be ready for you.
Well, thank you. I'm David Warren talking with Art Linkletter about his book, How to Make the Rest of Your Life the Best of Your Life, co-authored with his friend Mark Victor Hansen out on Nelson Books. Okay, let's play a game, Mr. Linkletter. I'm going to say a word, and I want you to tell me the first thing that comes into your head, okay?
Okay.
Are you ready? Retirement.
I don't know what it is. I never want to live it. I don't believe in it unless you call retirement changing what you've been doing to something else, but it must have the one common feature that is meaningful, purposeful.
In your intro, you say that we should forget entitlements, and you say try empowerments. What do you mean by that? Forget entitlements.
We have been fooled in by the government into thinking that we are entitled to Social Security, for instance. We're not entitled to it. The Congress can change it, has already changed it, and I'm on a big crusade right now. I'm a president of the Grandfathers of America to see that our grandchildren have a little help from Social Security, which they call an entitlement. That's just one of many things which people like to say to give you comfort. The entitlement of good health. If you take certain vitamins, the entitlement of power. If you become the head of something and you run a lot of people to death. But empowerment is something else. Empowerment means that you're using your wits and your experience and your knowledge and your friends and your money to help make things better for everybody.
In the book, you have 10 empowerments starting on page 5. I know you have your book handy there. Tell us about empowerment number 1. You can defy the stereotypes of old age.
Well, society is filled with outdated ideas about people over 65. They're frail, they're losing their marbles, they're cranky, They're out of touch. They have no interest in sex. And those ideas are part of the conventional wisdom about growing old. And if you listen to them, they'll rob you of your power to create the life you want. So instead, why not adopt some unconventional wisdom of your own? And so this is the first step to making the rest of your life the best of your life, convincing yourself that you can create the life you want rather than being bound by archaic ideas. You can, and you will, once you empower yourself with statements like these. You want me to read a couple of them?
Yes, yes.
I will never retire, but instead work at something that gets me excited to get out of bed in the morning. I'll make myself fit and healthy and athletic. I will prevent disease and improve my health by improving what I put in my body. I will embrace adventures, travel, new experiences in my own hometown. I will live independently. I will create new relationships with all kinds of human beings. I will live each day with passion and purpose. I will discover or rediscover my spiritual life. Now, when you say these things and write them down, if you write them down, your intentions, you're 10 times more likely to achieve them than if you just talk about them.
I believe that. Empowerment number 2, you can determine your longevity. How's that possible?
Well, to begin with, you are what you think. You live between your ears. That's true. And you can empower and make yourself healthy by having the kind of thoughts and the kind of ambitions that will keep your mind active. If your mind goes, then the rest of the body is more apt to have all kinds of problems. And, of course, some of those things come up with old age from the standpoint of, you might say, the amount of damage that can be done. Alzheimer's is the disease that most old people worry about because there you are, helpless, memoryless, and with all of the problems of a person who's just lost his mind. So we must keep our minds active. And so that living between your ears means that you have a sense of humor. And you can laugh at a lot of the stress that comes up in life if you adopt that attitude. And the stress is what finally breaks down things, including your immune system, and makes you liable to disease and to all kinds of frail happenings. So thinking, the brain is a great big muscle. And if the old saying is true, that disuse is dis-ease, it works not only for the body but for the brain. If you don't use it, you lose it. And so keep your mind active, keep active to learning and all those things.
Empowerment number 3, you can make new friends and create rich new relationships.
And you had better, because at 94 I can tell you that almost everyone who were near and dear to me in my youth are gone. Over the years, they've died at all kinds of ages, and I sit here now talking to you, thinking back over my childhood chums and the people I worked with at the beginning in radio, and on down through my life, are for the most part gone. And if you don't make new friends, you become a loner. And there's nothing worse for an old person to be, in almost every way that I can think, of being without friends. Because friends give you inspiration to talk and to use your brain. Mm-hmm. And you got to pick your friends correctly. Speaking of that, because everybody knows somebody around them, a relation or a friend, who is what I call a catastrophizer. I use that in the book. And a catastrophizer is one of those people who get great joy in spreading bad news.
Oh.
They can't wait to tell you about the latest catastrophe, who got divorced, who got sick, who died. And if you hang around with people like that, you're going to be thinking dull, dead thoughts and be grieved by them, and they're not good for you. So stay away from people who are catastrophizers. And I tell one story in the book that's one of my favorites. I I say, smile a lot. I came up to a lady who was the manager of a jewelry store one time when my wife was shopping, and she was standing in the middle of her shop with her arms folded and looking very, very grumpy. She just had a kind of a scowl as she looked around. So, being mischievous as I am, I walked over to her and I said, are you the owner or the manager here? She said, yes, I am. I said, are you happy? She says, of course I'm happy. And I said, why don't you notify your face? Smile. And she had to smile.
Empowerment number 4, you can be financially secure as long as you live. And that is a big fear to people as they age.
That's one of the greatest fears. Most people, as they get to be in their 60s or early 70s, they say, do I have enough to last me without making life just miserable? Do I have enough money? And we have a big chapter in this book on how to start saving, how to start investing, how to start thinking about keeping your money growing. And while we won't go into that now, it's a very good chapter with a lot of authorities telling us how to start early and save a little and put it into things which pay a good interest, not a great interest. Anybody who tells you to invest in something going to double your money in the next year, start to run. Just 5, 6, or 7% interest, compounded, will make you a millionaire by the time you're 65 or 70 if you start at 20. And you start with $10 a month.
Good advice. Empowerment number 5 is that you can be more fit than you were at 30. And we heard some examples of that a little bit earlier of Mr. Linkletter's exercise regimen. Is there something more you wanted to say about that?
Oh, yes, a lot more. I'm a physical education expert. I was an athlete, and I've stayed that all my life. And yeah, I don't expect other people to be athletes and do violent exercise. I stopped playing four-wall handball in national championships when I was 50. Because when you get older, you don't need to have such violent or lengthy exercise of any kind. If you just do 15 minutes every other day of stretching and walking, not running, not galloping around, not lifting heavy weights, not sweating and burning till the muscles burn. Those are youthful things. Older people, by exercising moderately and regularly, can keep their joints in action and stave off osteoporosis as well as other aches and pains.
That's great advice for Mr. Art Linkletter. We're talking about his book today, How to Make the Rest of Your Life the Best of Your Life, co-written with Mark Victor Hansen. This book is available at your local Christian bookstore, on Nelson Books, and at other retail outlets. It's time for another break, but when we come back, some more empowerments. There are 5 more to go. Back after this.
The Road Show is a listener favorite, which airs each weekday here on the Oasis Radio Network, starting at 1 p.m. Eastern, 12 noon Central. The Road Show also has a great section on our website, oasisnetwork.org. There you'll find audio archives of select past interviews, plus guest lineup, and contact information and links to our Road Show sponsors and its hosts. So join us for The Road Show, whether on your radio or on your computer at oasisnetwork.org.
Here's a little bit about today's guest, Art Linkletter. He is a cultural and television icon, and he has lifted our spirits for more than 60 years, performing in such shows as House Party and Kids Say the Darndest Things. As chairman of the board of Linkletter Enterprises, Art oversees several building and management enterprises around the world. A best-selling author, he has written more than 20 books, including Old Age is Not for Sissies, and also the book we're talking about today, How to Make the Rest of Your Life the Best of Your Life, co-written with Mark Victor Hansen. And we were talking about empowerments before we took a break. There are 10 empowerments, Mr. Linkletter. And number 6, let's pick right back up here. You say that you can keep your mind agile and sharp. How do you do that personally?
You do it by keeping it active. And that could be reading, it could be games like crossword puzzles, it could be social people who keep you active out into the world of society so that you may play cards or you may be playing some more violent form of exercises like tennis or golf. But the main thing is to stay active, and being active physically and mentally at the same time does the best job of empowering both your mind and your body.
As we use the term nowadays, hang out, do you hang out with much younger people?
No, I don't. I see quite a few of them, but I hang out with people who I would say are in their 50s and 60s. Well, they're much younger
than
I am, by 30 or 40
years.
years. But when you get to the kids who are 18 to 25 and 35, they are in a different zone than I am, and I understand it, and I say, go ahead, appreciate your youth, but I don't like the music particularly. I don't like the attitude about the various kind of growing up attitudes, which all of us have gone through, of feeling we know everything, because young people, by the time they're 30, think they know everything, and old people are just fogies. And so I go for people who've lived through at least parenthood.
Empowerment number 7, you say, Mr. Linkletter, that we can make a positive difference in the world. And there's a reason to live.
Oh, yes. I happen to be a member of President Bush's council on volunteering. I was sworn in about 3 months ago, and for a 2-year session. And our job, there's 15 of us, is to work with the president on encouraging people to volunteer as they get older, volunteer at all ages of their life, but especially as they get older, in filling things that our society needs. Now, I'm going to add that, to begin with, the United States has the best record of any nation in the world on volunteerism. We're usually thought of as the richest nation, the most powerful nation, and all that sort of thing. But we are not as well known for being the most charitable nation in the world. We give more private money, not just corporate money, but actually individual money, to see that all kinds of good things happen to people who can't do it for themselves. And so volunteerism for President Bush is a very important part. And one of the first things we did, we organized a campaign so that the president, with all of his power, could put out to every federal agency in the United States, and that's tens of thousands of people in every kind of a federal job you can think of. And each head of each agency or branch was ordered to pick his number 2 or number 3 man in that organization and assign to him the job of promoting a volunteering effort by that group in something, whether it's for children, whether it's for old people, whether it's for parks, whether it's for water and environment. No matter what it is, there's all kinds of things to do, and volunteerism is a central part of what I do, and I include it in almost every talk I give as I go around the country. You can volunteer to begin with right in your own family. Grandparents, you know, are a great source of comfort to grandchildren, and provide them with advice that they're not even getting from their own parents, who are probably off working most of the day, unfortunately, both women and men nowadays. And the latchkey child comes home to an empty house at 2 or 3 in the afternoon. So that's just one. And then you got the church. If you're a churchgoer, there's all kinds of volunteering to be done with the help and the pastor and Sunday school work and other things. If you're a health nut, then you can volunteer in the hospitals, where you have blue workers and red coat workers and volunteers to do every kind of thing for nothing to make the life of people who are sick better off. Or if you're politically minded, you can volunteer in your community to do the things that people need to do, to see that the city council and the mayor gets help that they can't afford to pay for, and all the things that go on to make a city work. Or you can do things in the work that you did when you were really active and growing up. If you're a doctor, you can volunteer to do things for nothing in places where people need the help, and on and on and on. But volunteering is a great way to keep young, keep busy, and be very, very helpful.
Mr. Linkletter, our audience listening today believes in sowing and reaping, so we're in agreement with you on what you've just shared about volunteering.
Yes. Oh, yes.
Empowerment number 8, you say that you can discover and nurture your creativity. How do you personally nurture your creativity?
Well, it depends on the kind of creativity you're talking about. There are all kinds of people who are able to give you advice on artistic things. If you are an artsy, craftsy person who likes to paint or sculpt or do beautiful gardening work with all kinds of figures out in your garden, and all the ways of creativity, you find the people who are in the business love to organize groups to compete with each other and to have fun and work. You can sign up in school. At the University of California at Los Angeles, we have, in our department on the Center on Aging, started a whole new attitude of the school about 5 to 7 years ago of admitting seniors at a very low rate to almost any class. At first it was just a few, and it's spreading, and this idea is spreading across the country, and that is go back to school, go back to college, and you don't have to work in order to make a career or to feel that you've got to have A grades or anything. You go back to stretch your mind and to hear the lectures and to go to things. And there are universities and community colleges that welcome seniors, a certain number, and that is a great way to keep your mind active, make new young friends, and to constantly empower yourself.
I love that. You know, so many of the elderly seem to live in the past, always be telling stories about the past. And empowerment number 9 is where you say that you can look forward. You don't always have to be looking back at something that happened yesterday, yesteryear.
I have a poem that I say that fits that answer. It says, I never want to be what I want to be, because there's always something out there yet for me. I get a kick out of living in the here and now, but I never want to feel I know the best way how, because there's always one hill higher with a better view, something waiting to be learned I never knew. So till my days are over, never fully fill my cup. Let me go on growing up. How's that for an answer?
I love that. I'm David Warren, talking with Art Linkletter today about the book that he's co-written with Mark Victor Hansen. The name of the book, How to Make the Rest of Your Life the Best of Your Life. Again, this is out on Nelson Books at your local Christian bookstore and other retail outlets. Well, the final empowerment is that you can create a life filled with new experiences, inspiration, and great achievements. Now, if anyone has inspired and achieved greatness, it is today's guest, Art Linkletter. So when we come back, I want to spend our remaining moments discussing his contributions to the television industry. We'll be back for the wrap-up after this. I'm David Warren, Program Director at Oasis Radio Network and one of the hosts of this podcast. All of our hosts enjoy hearing from you, our listening family, so drop us a note. Our email address is roadshow@oasisnetwork.org. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast and you'll receive new episodes on your mobile devices. And now, back to the show. I'm David Warren, interviewing television great Art Linkletter, and we're talking about the book he's co-written with Mark Victor Hansen, How to Make the Rest of Your Life the Best of Your Life. This is out on Nelson Books at your local Christian bookstore and other retail outlets. Well, as I've said many times during today's road show, Art Linkletter is a television icon, and since I have the honor of interviewing you today on the radio, Mr. Linkletter, I'd like to ask you this question. What contributions to the medium of television are you most proud
of? Spreading information and motivation to millions of people through the radio and television audiences, which I have been a part of. And actually, my early ambition to be a school teacher and a college professor, is deeply satisfied by my knowledge of how the things I say and the things I do on the air with people are going to help people all across the country. You couldn't believe it. I was getting an average during many, many years of my life of 5,000 letters a week.
Wow.
And those letters expressed their needs, their gratitude, their all kinds of things. And one of them might surprise you. My programs on radio, especially, were transformed to the Armed Forces radio networks of the world, of the United States. And I would get letters from Croatia, China, you just name it, saying, we're trying to learn English so that someday we can come to America or at least speak and read English. And when we hear you, you speak so clearly and you speak so correctly instead of the way some of the disc jockeys do in talking about music, that we have lessons in speaking American language.
Wow.
And then I get letters from people who are lonesome in prison, and letters from people who are lonesome because they're traveling salesmen in cars listening to the radio. It's the radio in automobiles today, of course, is universal, shortwave and longwave. And you reach people who are out on long truck hauls and other places, and you just make their day. You keep them up to date on what's going on and how people are thinking, and they can share experiences and thoughts and opinions with the people I'm talking to, because my shows were not just all ha-ha fun shows. They were shows that featured famous people and experts on all kinds of subjects.
My name is David Warren, and again, it has been an honor to interview for the last hour Mr. Art Linkletter. He has co-written the book with Mark Victor Hansen entitled How to Make the Rest of Your Life the Best of Your Life. This is out on Nelson Books at your local Christian bookstore and at other retail outlets. But within the book, you will find sections on how to improve your health, stay fit, how to keep your memory from fading, how to remain or become financially independent, how to become a seniorpreneur, and how to keep a vibrant spiritual life. And that last one is especially important to our listeners. We have a couple minutes left, and you are on Christian radio today, Mr. Linkletter. Is there anything that you'd like to share about your faith before we say goodbye?
Of course, my faith began when my father, who was a Baptist minister and a street preacher, adopted me, and I had just been born, and the parents had gone away and left me in a little town in Canada called Moose Jaw up in the northwest. And my dad, who was on an evangelical trip through Canada, he was a Canadian from Prince Edward Island. The Linkletter clan comes from there. And they heard about this baby being left there, and they picked me up, and I grew up as a preacher's kid. This does not guarantee you to go to heaven, but it certainly gives you a basis for a Christian belief. Of course, it had a few disadvantages. We said prayers at every meal, and my father's idea of a prayer was anything longer than 20 minutes. And I sometimes laughingly describe my youth as saying I was 14 before a bite of really hot food ever passed my lips.
That's great. Thank you, Mr. Linkletter, for your time today.
I've enjoyed it with you, and hope you'd send me a copy if you have one.
I'll sure do that. Again, the name of the book, How to Make the Rest of Your Life the Best of Your Life. Well, for Art Linkletter, my name is David Warren, and it has been another great Road Show. You've been listening to The Road Show. If you'd like to write to us, here's our address. The Road Show, P.O. Box 1924, Tulsa, Oklahoma, 74101. Our email address is roadshow@oasisnetwork.org. The views of today's guest aren't necessarily those of this station, but we do appreciate and thank our guest for spending this time with us. The Road Show, an Oasis Network presentation.